Hello, my fellow beloved nerds. Guru here. I'm going to show you the Shadow Priest rotation. I've had a few people ask me basically how it works, if they're doing it right, and that sort of thing. So basically, the Shadow Priest rotation is almost a carbon copy of a Affliction Warlock rotation, with some slight differences. It's about managing dots. There's one nuke you want to keep on cooldown, which is Mindblast. And then there's simply 2 DPS cooldowns that you have to worry about that are usually about 2 to 3 minutes. So let's go through the dots you'll be using. The highest damage dot that you have is Vampiric Touch, and you'll want to keep that up as much as you can. You want to recast it essentially when it's down to about 1 second left on the target. Then there's Devouring Plague, which I believe is actually more damage than Shadowward Pain, but I could be wrong. And then there's Shadowward Pain. These are the 3 dots that you have to really worry about. Shadowward Pain is actually not really something that is a concern, because if you're Mindflaying that target, it will automatically refresh Shadowward Pain. So after the 3 dots are applied, you want to Mind Blast, and then basically as your filler spell, when everything else is not in danger of falling off, you want to Mindflay. Mindflay applies a slow to the target, as well as reduces the cooldown on Shadowfiend, which is one of your DPS cooldowns. So a typical fight, for me, starts off by popping a Volcanic Potion, then putting up Vampiric Touch, followed by Devouring Plague, and then Shadowward Pain. At this point, I will usually Mind Blast and begin Mind Flaying. When I get to about 5 stacks of Evangelism, which allows me to use Archangel to its full potential, I will use Archangel, Lifeblood, and then Shadowfiend. Lifeblood is unique to me because I have Alchemy, and it's a nice little cooldown for a Shadow Priest because it gives you about 540 haste. So I'm going to buff up here and I'll run through the rotation. This is for single target, but it also works for multi-target. Multi-target fights, you really just want to keep Shadowward Pain and Vampiric Touch on another target, typically as your focus target, and then I have keys bound to cast at your focus target. So we'll start off here. I'm not going to waste a Volcanic Potion on this, but do Vampiric Touch, Devouring Plague, Shadowward Pain, Mind Blast, and Mindflay. So now I've hit 5 stacks of Evangelism. Start Mindflaying. And see, at this point, it just becomes simple dot management. I'm using what's called Quartz to kind of keep track of when I can start recasting Mindflay or Mindblast or anything like that. I also have tidy nameplates, which, as you can see, shows my dots above the target. Now this is great for any fight where you have multiple targets that you're trying to roll dots on, because it's easy enough with 2 targets because you just use your focus frame, but 3 or more, you want to be using a mod like tidy plates, which will show you exactly what dots are being held on what targets. So this is essentially the entire rotation right here. Now if you do have to switch to an add, it depends on how much health the add has, but if it's kind of a low health add, like something with about 100k health or less, you pretty much just want to use this sort of rotation. You would switch to it and do Mind Spike, and then Mind Blast, and then just Mind Spike, Mind Spike, Mind Spike, Mind Blast, and that's just that general rotation. Otherwise, if it's a add with a larger health pool, I would do something like this. I would start casting dots on that target. And depending upon the priority of killing it, or if it's just something that has to die eventually but we're not focusing on it, for instance, Thralian and Valiona in Bastion of Twilight is a good example of bosses in which I would use focus frames, because you can keep the dots on both dragons pretty much the entire fight. At lower gear levels, you may want to include Shadowward Death into your rotation right before you would Mindflay, because when you Shadowward Death, you'll see that I gain 10% of my mana back, as soon as I cast it. So what you would do is you'd put dots up, and then it would be off cooldown initially. You would use Shadow Word Death to get that mana back. You shouldn't really have too much problem in raids because you're getting replenishment and you have all those sorts of buffs. And your Shadowfiend will be off cooldown pretty frequently because every time you crit with Mindflay, I think I mentioned already, it reduces the cooldown. Not significantly, but enough that you want to be Mindflaying as much as possible as well. If you really have a bad mana situation and you just really need mana, you can Dispersion, which will give you plenty of mana back, as you can see. Although it is obviously not optimal as you're not able to cast while dispersioned. That's the basics of Shadow Priest rotation, managing dots on the target, using Archangel on cooldown, and Shadowfiend wherever possible. Mindflay is your filler, and don't forget to Mindblast to keep up empowered shadows, and as your nuke. Alright, well, see you later, nerds. Thanks for watching.